everybody. Today I'm going to do a quick walkthrough on how I make a deer skull go from looking like this guy to looking like this guy. Most of the time when I get a deer head in here to do a Euro mount on it, it comes looking like this. Sometimes they're already skinned out, but most of the time they come like this. So the first step you're going to do is skin it out, clean as much of the meat off of it as you can to get it to looking something like this. You can see most of the meat's off there, the eyes are removed. It's as cleaned up as we can get it without getting really crazy with it. Next thing I do is put that head in the beetle tank. See, there's already some beetles starting to crawl all over it. So I'll put them in there, and then after the beetles have cleaned it up, I'll move them over to the racks here. There's some cleaned up deer already. That's the de-beetling rack, so it's just a little bit of an elevated spot for the beetles to come off of that skull, and they'll go on to the fresh one to eat, and that way I don't lose a whole lot of beetles every time I'm pulling the skull out of here. I give them a few days to work their way off of that skull. The next step once they come out of the beetle tank is to get the degreasing started. So for that I put a bunch of deer into this big pot with a whole bunch of Dawn dish soap. I'll get that water not quite boiling but like hot, and then that's where they're gonna sit there. You can already see some of the greasy looking bubbles that are on the top of the water. That's all the grease and oil coming out of that skull. So this can take a while. It's probably the longest part of the process, but if you want a real nice skull at the end, it's a very important part of that process. Okay, next step once they come out of the degreasing tank is to start the whitening process. So for that I just use this peroxide. Put a pretty healthy coating on there, and I just use a paintbrush, paint it all over the whole skull, trying it in all the nooks and crannies. If you can, avoid getting it on the antlers. If you do, it's not a huge deal. You can always fix it afterwards, but it's just an extra step you don't need to take. Be careful. There, and that's going to sit for a couple days. You may need to do a second coat on it if you have some spots that are a little more stubborn, but generally just one coat like this, a couple days, and it's ready for the next step. Okay, now that the peroxide has been on there for a few days, it's time to rinse it off. So I just take a kettle like this, boil some water, and then just pour it over the skull. Make sure you get it in all the crevices and everything. Quite often, after you do this, the skull will look a little bit darker. You can see right here it looks dark. That's mostly just because the skull is wet. As they dry, that'll all lighten up and they'll turn nice and white. So if you pour a bunch of boiling water on your skull to get that peroxide off, and all of a sudden you go, oh my god, my skull looks super dark, and don't panic. That's just the wet bone. As it dries, that will all lighten up. So this one looks pretty good. Sometimes you need a couple kettles depending on how much of that stuff has been put on there, but this one looks pretty good. So I'm gonna put this guy in front of a fan to dry off. Yeah, and then we'll take a look at it and see if any other spots need a little bit of touch up, but I think this one should be pretty good. So the next step after I get the boiling water on the deer and rinse all the peroxide off is I put them into this thing here. My wind tunnel. So you got all the deer here. There's a big fan on the end of it over there. So that just blows all the air through here, helps dry the skulls off, get all the moisture out of them. Make sure that they're nice and dry, so they're not going to get any kind of mold or smell come from moisture that's stuck somewhere in there. So leave them there for a couple days to get really nice and dried out, and then the skull's pretty much done at that point. Here is the end result.